Today, we're going to be taking a look at using Resize AI to upscale an image that I cropped in on that I edited earlier. So if you haven't caught that video, don't worry. You can find the link to that video in the description box below. But if you have caught that video, then you are already caught up to where we are. And truth be told, you don't have to watch that video to gain any insight from this particular video. So if you are interested in Resize AI, what the heck it is, and how to practically use it on your photos, well, this video is going to cover exactly that. With that being said, this is not a comprehensive tutorial on the Resize AI tool. All right, I'm just going to show you how to practically use the tool. Let's go ahead and jump into ON1 Photo Raw and take a look at how to use it. We are inside of ON1 and you can see we have the image here. Now, I want to show you kind of the crux of why a resize tool becomes helpful in the scenario that I am positioning here today. All right, if I press the letter C, you'll notice that I cropped in on the image. The area around the photo that I didn't really want, I wanted to tell a story, a very particular one, and so I cropped the image to fit the frame the way that I wanted it to look. This is a very common thing, and depending on what your use case of the image is, you may need to resize the file, meaning when I crop in, I'm losing resolution, I'm losing dimension, and so if I am trying to print this image at a larger print size, and larger is relative to how much you cropped, then you may need to resize your photo. All right. Now, I'm not going to get into all the technicalities of when you may or when you may not need to resize. That is a discussion for another day. But that is essentially where we are. Okay. I cropped in on the image and I want to regain all of the resolution that I lost, or at least try to regain the resolution that I lost. So if I go ahead and hit the return key to commit my crop again, I am going to go ahead and jump into the Resize AI module. Now, there are a few ways of accessing the Resize AI module. The way that I prefer to do it is using the right bumper, but not everyone has that right bumper showing. So really quickly, if you click on Window, and then you come down to the bottom where it says Show Right Bumper, if you have a check mark next to the Show Right Bumper text, then you will have a bumper on the right side, hence Show Right Bumper. And at the very top there is an icon for the Resize AI workspace. Now, if you are working on a laptop and you're like, Chris, I just don't want to waste any screen real estate, fully understand. So for you, if you don't want this right bumper on your ON1, you can come over here to the left bumper, which is showing for everyone for the most part. And you can click on this More section. And then if you come down about halfway, you'll see Resize AI. Both of these methods work the same way, regardless of where you are. You can also access this the same way if you're in the Browse module. So just keep that in mind. I am in the Edit module. I'm going to go ahead and click Resize AI. And then this brings us to the Resize AI workspace. Now, I would like to pause here and mention I'm on the latest version of ON1 Photo Raw. It is the version that was just released that is increasing the speed. So I'd be curious to know if you've downloaded it and if you are seeing speed improvements for your workflow. Now, I'm going to go ahead and minimize some things just to simplify the process because I think that that's important. All right. Now, of note, this photo was taken on the Sony A6700, which is a 26 megapixel camera. And all that means is I had a pretty good amount of resolution, and that's the reason why I was able to crop and still retain a lot of information here. All right. And so what I want to do is get my image closer to that 26 megapixels. All right. So when working with Resize AI, the first thing we need to do is tell ON1 what size we want the photo to be. If I come over here to the top of my right column and click on photo size, you'll notice that I get a workspace here and there's some information. Now, the top line here, I'm going to bypass because I don't really look at that if I'm being 100% honest. except for this percentage amount. And that'll make sense here in a little bit. We'll come back and take a look. But just note, I'm at 100% resolution or viewing quality right now based off of where this image was originally cropped, all right? Or I guess where it was cropped when I was editing. Now, I get the information for how that crop was actually put together. So I cropped the width to 4,174 pixels to 2,748 pixels. All right. Now you can see here the original dimensions. The width was 6,000 by 4,000 essentially. All right. And so I did lose some resolution. And the whole reason you would want to use a Resize AI tool is in order to increase that resolution that you lost, or to buy back some of that resolution. Now, you have a few ways of telling ON1 how you want it to recover that resolution. And in all of my experimenting with this tool, you choose the one that works the best for you. I personally like megapixels. However, if I click this little drop down next to Resize 2, I get a few different options. And if you are like a gee whiz mathematician and you want to work with dimensions, you could definitely do it that way. I personally don't necessarily need to work this way, but if you're printing something and you need it to be like the size of the paper, dimensions may be helpful. But then you also have long edge, short edge, and then if you want to work with just the height and just the width, you could do that. But I'll be honest with you, I work with it on megapixels pretty much 10 out of 10. All right. I don't recall ever using any of those other options. And again, this isn't a comprehensive tutorial. This is just me, how I practically use it. And I'm just sharing my tips and tricks, if you will. And so now that I have megapixels selected, it's easier for me to really pay attention to this because I know what my camera's megapixels were, which was 26. And so if I come over here to this little section, click in it one time, it'll highlight, and then I can just type in 26 and press the tab key on my keyboard. And now I have increased the resolution back to 26 megapixels. And so what that means is I'm essentially getting what I would have gotten out of camera after the crop, if that makes sense, right? And so earlier I told you I don't really pay attention to this file size with the exception of the percentage. And so when I moved from that 11% or that 11 megapixels, which was where we were. So if I go back to 11 and hit tab, and I think it was like 11.37. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, 11.37. You can see it's at 100% there. And if I want to increase this by 50%, well, by moving this up to 26 megapixels, I'm increasing the file size to 151%. Now, what that allows me to do is you can see I can get a lot closer to the bird because there's more resolution. If I bring this back down to 11.37, you'll see that it zooms me out of the bird because there's not as much resolution available for me to zoom in on the photo. And that's the reason why we would use a tool like this. And so I'm going to go ahead and type 26 and hit tab, and I'm going to commit that for now. So now that we understand the megapixels, let's talk about resolution. And this can be one of those confusing areas. So I'm going to very, very simplify this because I think it just depends on what you're trying to do with this tool. All right. The why really does matter when working with a resizing tool. However, if you want to simplify this, if you come over to the far right side, there's a little 3-dot menu. If you click that, you get a few options. Now, you just have to choose, what are you resizing this for? Are you resizing this because you want someone to be able to zoom in on the image on a computer? Well, then you can click the first option here. Or are you trying to resize this because you want to print something to physical paper and you want to be able to like put it into a glass or something like that? Well, you have these options down here, general photo printing, and then you have Canon HP printer, and that's going to be optimized, or at least the idea optimization for that printer. All right. So just choose what you're trying to do here. Don't worry so much about those numbers, because if you start getting too deep in on the numbers, it can become overwhelming. And so just choose the option of what you're trying to do here. And so for me, I typically leave it set to 300 DPI, which is general photo printing, because most of the time I'm trying to upscale an image so it prints decently instead of like overly pixelated. All right. And so that's all we have to do for the photo size. Now we jump into the next section, which is settings. And settings is a very simple section. We're not going to overcomplicate this. You have two options, standard and highest quality. Standard is going to give you the fastest render out of ON1 Photo Raw, and it does a really good job. All right. And the highest quality one is obviously going to give you higher quality, but the trade-off is it is going to take longer. And when I say it's going to take longer, you might as well just let it run and then go do something else. Like, it's not one of those things that you sit around your computer for. All right. It does render some really good quality, but it takes longer. All right. And in all of my testing, and we're going to take a look at some sample files here in a second, as well as if you want to look at the sample files yourself, you can go and download those using the link in the description box. And that's available for everyone, because this isn't really a follow along as much as it is just a showcase of how to use the tool. With that being said, you have the standard of like standard quality and highest quality. And then if we come down here to model, you'll notice that there's a few different options. Ignore those options. Like, I'm just being 100% honest with you. Unless you are like super technical, ignore those options. Just choose one of these two. But honestly, if you choose up here, watch, when I click highest quality, it changes this to highest quality. And if I click standard, it changes the model to standard. So you don't even really have to come to this drop down. I believe this is only here because there are some more technical options down here. But again, we're not going into those. We're just going to keep this simple, because ON1 is one of those tools where you can either use the simplicity of it or you can use the complexity of it. We're going to use the simplicity of it. All right. And so the next option here is tile reduction. And I'll show you some examples of what this actually is here when we get into the examples. But just note, normal and high are your options. And the way that I use this tool is I always leave it on normal. And if I get some tiling in my image, then I come back and I re-render it using the high. That's as simple as it is. Now, most of the time, if I use high quality, I always turn on high for the tile reduction. And I think that's just the way that it should work. So that's how I personally do it, and it always works out pretty good. So those are all the settings that we're going to cover in today's walkthrough. And the reason, most of the stuff that's down here is very specific, and I don't plan on doing any of that with my image. And because I already applied some sharpening while I was editing the photo, I don't need to worry about using sharpening here because I don't want to over sharpen the image. And so that's why I'm not covering any of those other things. And so when you are done using Resize AI and you have all your adjustments made, you can come down here to the blue check mark and click it. Now, Resize AI is going to take your image and it is going to spit it out in a new file format. So if you were working with a raw file, it's going to spit out your image in whatever format that you decide to use. Now, by default, it's going to select the folder where your image is stored on the hard drive. So right here, this photo was taken at the National Zoo. So it's trying to save the file into the National Zoo folder. But of course, you can navigate using your file system to get wherever you want to go. So I want to go here and I'll go to edit it photos. And then I have a folder where I was putting all the resized images. All right. You do whatever you want to do for your particular images. Now, if you want the best quality, I would recommend using a TIFF file. And I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section if you have a different preference. But if you click on this little drop down here, you get a few different options for file format. And again, I personally like to use the TIFF. I would not recommend using the DNG unless you're trying to preserve something very specific about the file format. But remember, if you're working on this post your edit workflow, meaning you've already applied your HSL and you've already changed the white balance, those settings are going to be baked in to the DNG file. And then you're going to end up like trying to correct the baseline that you just baked into the file. I don't recommend a DNG unless you are doing this at the beginning of your workflow where you haven't done any edits to the image, you just cropped it, or you want to upscale it because maybe you're shooting on a 12 megapixel camera and you need something that's going to shoot, or you need something to be 40 megapixels or whatever it may be. Then DNG may be a good option for you. But I personally like to do this at the end of my workflow, which is why we're here now at the end of the workflow. This is where I personally like to plug in and do all of my edits, which is why I use the TIFF file. All right. So that's a long way around of saying I recommend the TIFF file. Now, I'm not going to hit save here because, again, it does take a little bit of time. But you can see I've already rendered some of these files. And so I'm going to hit cancel here. And then I'm also going to hit the X on the actual workspace here. And we're going to go over to that folder. So here it is. And we're going to take a look at them here inside of ON1. I could take you to the Finder and look at them, but it's just easier to look at them here inside of ON1. And for everyone who's downloading these files, you can do the same thing. You can just download them and look at them here inside of ON1 by just opening up that folder in the local drive section or wherever you have it saved. So first thing we're going to do is come over here to the image without resize. All right. And I am going to change my view options because I want to show you the side-by-side comparison. And so we'll come down here to the bottom, click the little chevron to pop up our options. And I'm going to click the switch to compare view. And so now that I have that, I'm going to close out this left side and I'm going to leave the right side open because we want to look at the information up here. So let me just close out all this other stuff, make it a little bit more streamlined for us. And so the next thing that I want to do is I want to take a look at the standard version of the Resize AI with the 300 DPI and the standard version of tiling. And so that's going to be this one right here. So I'm just going to hold down the command or control key if you're on a PC, and then I'm going to click this second image. And so now I have two photos available to look at. The one on the right is the initial TIFF file. If we had not used Resize AI, this is what we would have gotten straight out of the export. All right. And so what I want to do is click on lock, pan, and zoom. All right. And what this is going to do is it's going to zoom us into the same area, but you'll notice that it's not going to zoom us in to the same amount. So I'm going to click on the image on the right, and you'll notice the image on the left, I got a whole lot closer to the bird. It didn't even zoom in on the image on the right. It actually kind of zoomed out. And the reason for that is hence the reason we're doing the resize upscale. All right. And so let's take a look here. On the image on the right, you'll notice we're still at that 4000 by 2000 pixel dimension. But if I click on the image on the left, you'll notice that our dimensions, it jumps up to 6000 by 4000. And again, that's that 50% increase because I went from an 11 megapixel file to a 26 megapixel file. And so that's where why we're seeing that huge jump in being able to zoom in. And this is very helpful when you need to be able to print something larger because you're only going to be able to print so large with a image that has small dimensions. All right. Now, again, this one, it did a really good job. If I zoom in here and zoom or like move this around, you'll notice there's no tiling issues. And you're probably wondering like, well, Chris, what the heck is a tiling issue? So let me show you. We're going to go ahead and I want to make sure that I keep the original selected. And then we're going to hit Command and deselect the standard TIFF. And then we're going to come over here. I think it's this one. Yep, TIFF with the standard tiling. And you'll notice that in this photo, when I zoom in, you'll notice there's like these little black lines going through here. And that's the tiling that I was referring to. And it just doesn't look very good. Now, in this image, you could probably like write that off as, oh, well, maybe that's a net. But I know that there wasn't a net there or any sort of mesh wire framing or anything. And so that's something that you want to pay attention to and probably do away with. And that's where the next option comes in. So let me go ahead and deselect the high export because that's on the highest standard, by the way. Let me just clarify this. You know what? Let's go ahead and select the standard export and the tiling so we can compare them side by side. And so if I zoom in to this area, you'll notice on the left, this is the photo that is using the highest version of the highest quality Resize AI. And on the right side, this is using the standard version of Resize AI. And so but this is also using the standard tiling on the highest quality version, if that makes sense. And that's why we're getting these tile issues. Now, if I go ahead and deselect the highest version with the standard tile, and I click on the highest with the high version of the tiling, and then we zoom into the same area, you'll notice we no longer have that tiling issue. And that's the reason why I was showing you that if the tiling issue shows up on your image, like so, if you get that happening in your photo, don't worry. Just go ahead and come back into ON1 and change it over to tile high, and it'll resolve that issue. So here's some final thoughts on using Resize AI. You can use this at pretty much any point in your workflow, although my recommendation is that you use it at the end, or at least towards the end of your workflow, because I think that you want to upscale all of the edits that you are applying, especially if you're using a composite or making a composite image. That's my suggestion. You let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Now, this is also working local to your machine. It doesn't go up to a cloud, and ON1 doesn't use your photos to train their AI. Because all the AI components are downloaded locally to your machine, you don't even need to be connected to the internet in order to use it. And because you don't have to be connected to the internet and the way that it works, you don't have to pay for credits. And so you can experiment with this tool without fear of paying more money or running your bank account dry, right? Or having to purchase more and more credits. This is a credit-free system. And so that's one of the benefits of using ON1 Photo Raw, in my personal opinion. And so I recommend it. And so if you are interested in picking up ON1 Photo Raw, consider using the affiliate link and coupon code down in the description box below. I do make a commission from everyone who uses those, but it's at no extra cost to you, and it's a great way of supporting the channel. I greatly appreciate everyone who does that. Now, of course, if you'd like to learn how to use ON1 Photo Raw, regardless of if you're a beginner, an intermediate, or maybe even advanced, and you're just trying to figure out a very specific thing that you're just not quite sure how to do, well, consider signing up for a training call with me, and I'll meet with you one-on-one, and we will address whatever situation that you're going through, or if you're just looking to learn how to use the software because maybe you're new to photography, then I'll help you learn how to use the software so you can get your creative vision out and into the world a little bit faster. If that's something you're interested in, check the link in the description box below. With all that said, hey, I appreciate you guys hanging out, and until next time, I want you to stay inspired and keep creating. Peace.